Hello, and welcome to Regrets I've Had a Few. I'm Paul Hunter, Artistic Director of Told by an Idiot, and this is a podcast where I talk to friends and colleagues delving into what made them the person they are today. Hello, and welcome to Regrets I've Had a Few. This week I'm chatting to an amazing young actor that I've been lucky enough to work with twice now, and I think he is really gifted. He's going on to do extraordinary things, as I knew he would. It's Omari Douglas. Omari, welcome.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for the lovely words. It's very kind of you.
Well, it's well deserved. And the first thing I have to say is, obviously we chatted about this before, but we are from the same part of the country. So
we are.
Exactly. We are both from the Midlands. I'm from Birmingham, and you're from
Wolverhampton.
Excellent.
Yes.
So that felt like when we first met 3 years ago doing Wise Children for Emma Rice. That felt like a connection. Because
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know about you. I still find over the years, there's not often when I end up in a show with people from my hometown or nearby.
I was literally just about to say exactly the same thing. I don't know why, I just get really excited by the camaraderie of just sort of like meeting people from the area, because especially when I was young and I was kind of doing youth theatre, like initially when I first moved to London, the only people that I knew that were from that area were people who'd also moved to London who I did youth theatre with. So then like gradually you start to meet more and more people, and it's like, oh, it's not just this like tiny little pool of people that you think you were just sort of like running around with at like your youth theatre. But no, it's so good. It's fab.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I also, obviously being a little bit older than yourself, I spent a lot of time touring in theatre for many years. And for a long time, I never went to Birmingham. For some reason, on the touring circuit, it never happened. And then about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I finally went back to the Rep, Birmingham Rep, where I used to go as a kid. And I really enjoyed it. Going home felt slightly... I have to ask you, have you ever played a part where you've had to do a Wolverhampton accent?
No, I haven't yet. I would like to. Although I say that actually, and I mean, so many people do say to me, they're like, oh, you haven't really got much of an accent, which I do hear myself, but you know, when you sort of like are assimilating in new circles, when you move to London and stuff, it kind of fizzles away. But I feel like that there would actually be a challenge in like trying to find it again, which is so interesting, I think, because
it's a very particular accent, isn't it? Because I was in a production of Tartuffe at Birmingham Rep that Roxana Silbert directed. And it was really great because she created the family of the show were all Brummies. So there was a lot of us were from Birmingham. And at the end of the play, there's a messenger who comes on stage from the King. And she cast this guy from Wolverhampton. And it was kind of brilliant that at the end, the messenger had a big speech. And the audience in Birmingham loved the fact that he had this Wolverhampton accent. Now, you and I both know, I think, sometimes people not from the area confuse these accents. Whereas I think Wolverhampton and Birmingham is very different.
Oh, so different. But yeah, I think people kind of like just club it together as one sound, don't they? But the Black Country sound is very different to the Birmingham sound. They're like really, really, really distinctive.
Definitely. You mentioned kind of growing up and stuff. And if I could take you back a little bit, do you have any recollection of when you first kind of got the theatrical bug? Or was it a school play? Or how did it happen?
The first moment that I remember at primary school was, I can't remember what year I was in, but we did a musical nativity called Stable Manners.
Excellent.
And yes, and I played a camel called Claude, who was French. It was sort of like a double act with another boy. I think it was Anthony or something like that. And I remember because we didn't have sort of like allocated drama classes. It was kind of like extracurricular when I was at primary school. And it was one of the English teachers who sort of took this extracurricular drama sort of activity after school. And I remember her saying to my mum, at one point, you know, you should really like let him go ahead and like sort of pursue all of this stuff. And I, at the time, like I knew that I loved it, but I was definitely sort of like dabbling in lots of other bits and bobs. Like I used to do karate, and I even tried football at one point, which is a memory that I'm more than happy to erase from my mind. But yeah, and then when I got to secondary school, again, I just started like jumping into school plays and productions and things. And I remember we did, they did a production of Jesus Christ Superstar when I was in year 7, actually. And I was like kind of overly keen and enthusiastic about just like mucking in for this production. I remember the head of performing arts saying, you know, if anyone could help out with props, then that would be really fantastic. And I remember going to like every off license possible, like getting my mom to drive me there to get all these sort of like wooden crates for like fruit and vegetables so that I could help out for like the temple scene. And I think I kind of maybe annoyed the head of performing arts a little bit because I was so keen to just kind of muck in. But yeah, it all just kind of spun out from there. And like you were talking about the rep, and I was really lucky that I got to do my like work experience placement there.
Oh, wow.
When I think I was 14 or 15. And I remember sort of careers advisors and that kind of thing saying, you know, right, so you want to do performing arts. They were like, you're going to have a bit of trouble being able to find like a work experience placement, that kind of thing. Because most people were doing their work placements at like supermarkets or like banks and that kind of thing. But at the time, the rep were doing like an allocated program for young people for work experience placements, which was incredible. And I remember being so excited because you had to apply, and they only had about 5 or 6 places, and they took you in a week around every single department in the theatre. And I remember they would just, I think they'd taken Our House on tour, the musical, the Madness musical. And I remember going into the auditorium, because at this point, I don't think I'd seen anything at the theatre, but they still had the set in the auditorium. And I was just like completely like blown away by just being on stage, getting on there. I think they took us up to the flies as well. And then we went into makeup, we went into prosthetics. Like, I just remember them telling us these really incredible stories. And yeah, I just feel really, really, really fortunate to have had a work placement in an institution of that caliber at so young. Because I also did a work placement at Central Youth Theatre as well, which is do you know Central Youth Theatre?
Yes, I heard of it.
Yeah. So I did a placement there too, which was really amazing. And then, funnily enough, I wasn't actually a part of that youth theatre group.
Where was your youth theatre group?
It was Wolverhampton Youth Music Theatre.
Okay.
So they produced a lot of musicals, of course, and I think the funding for that has changed now, but it was funded by like Wolverhampton Music Service, who provided like musical, like instrumental tuition to kids and stuff like that. And that is kind of where the pool of actors who I was working with, who I sort of are my like London buddies now, or were initially, until I sort of like met more people from the Midlands like yourself. But yeah, it was a really exciting time when I think about it, because with Wolverhampton Youth Music Theatre, they used to do like summer intensives.
Okay.
So you basically spent your whole summer holiday kind of like putting on a production. And all the productions that I did were at the Arena Theatre, which is University of Wolverhampton's sort of like allocated theatre space. This tiny sort of like little intimate space. And I was also a part of another amateur theatre group called Impulse Productions, which was run by a couple of guys who were actually at drama school at the time. One was it was Luke and John Dudley, and Luke was at Guildford School of Acting and John was at Mountview. And when I think about it, having gone through the drama school process, what they did was actually like, I don't know how they did it. They used to finish drama school on a Friday, drive back to the Midlands on a weekend, do the rehearsals, produce the show, put it on. I did some shows at the Arena. I did some at, what's that theatre in Cannock? It's in Cannock Chase. They've got like is this got like a civic theatre space? I can't remember what it's called, actually.
We shall research that, and we can put that out with the podcast and give them a plug,
yes.
Which would be good. But Omari, that sounds amazing. So was it the guy who was coming to work with you that introduced you to the idea of going to Mount View? Was that or was that just a...
So Luke actually was in sixth form when I was in sort of my lower years at secondary school. So that's how I got to know him. And then I just sort of heard, because I always admired those kind of like older people at school. And my secondary school isn't a performing arts specialist school at all, but just had a very, very, very strong department. And a lot of those sixth form students who would do like a BTEC performing arts, they'd go on and do like, they'd go to drama schools and stuff like that. But I was sort of toying with the idea of doing a BTEC, and then eventually I ended up just sort of doing like a very sort of like traditional set of A-levels, but I just got along with that crowd really well. So I hung out with them. So I was definitely like straddling both worlds, because I was very academic and I wanted to go to university, and I was sort of proud of being really geeky, and like I did the like Oxbridge Open days and that kind of thing. But I was just kind of going, I'm going to do this with the same view to want to be an actor. So I may as well just like go to drama school anyway. And there were a couple of people who went to Arts Eds, I think. And that was how I then heard about it. And then I ended up auditioning there and I got in. And I mean, I was really happy when I got in, because I remember my head of performing arts telling me that it was kind of like, I mean, as any drama school is, but Arts Ed being sort of like notoriously difficult to get in because there's such a like select number of places and that kind of thing. And she hadn't had many people like actually go off and do that course. So yeah, I was really lucky. And
well, it's an interesting thing that you say that thing about thinking about university and then realizing actually I'm going to be an actor anyway. Because I remember having a similar conversation earlier than you with my parents, who were trying to encourage me to go to university, and they often said, oh, well, you'll have something to fall back on. And I remember saying, well, if I have something to fall back on, I'm going to fall back on it.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought I just need to give it a go. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm assuming that there's no theatrical kind of people in your family. There was no one already in showbiz or...
No, I mean, actually, I had a cousin that went to Italia Conti for a little while. Yeah, I had a cousin that went to Italia Conti for a little while, and all my cousins are older than me. Like, I'm sort of the youngest of like that generation. So that was one of my early memories of sort of knowing what a drama school was and that kind of thing. And then apart from that, there isn't any kind of like theatrical connections. I mean, my uncle is a musician, and he sort of had a very successful band, like in the sort of late 90s, early 90s.
Who were they?
With like, they were called, so the first group that he was in was called Angry Mexican DJs, and they were like a house collective. And then he was in like a ska revival band called Stateside Hombres, and they toured with like, they supported James Brown.
Wow.
At one point. Like,
Omari.
Yeah. So yes,
I'm going to look up Angry Mexican DJs after this.
Yes.
That sounds very interesting.
Yes.
So when you got to Arts Ed, you were doing what, the musical theatre course or the...
I was doing the musical theatre degree. And so there's like 2 degree programs there, the musical theatre and the sort of acting for screen and for film and television. I think it's got a very specific title. And there was about 45 people in my year. And strangely, despite the fact that there's only sort of like 45 in on the musical theatre school, and probably a bit less on the sort of like straight acting courses, sort of however you want to refer to it, we never really crossed paths with each other. It was quite like, and I was head of the student union with my best friend when I was in my 3rd year, and we made this like really concerted effort to try and like integrate like the 2 schools together, but it just was like, it just never really seemed to happen. And I mean, I knew people that were on the course as well, and actually a really good friend of mine who I did youth theatre with and also went to secondary school with, she did the acting course there. But yeah, my course was very sort of like split. I mean, on paper, they say it's like 33% dance, 33% acting, and 33% vocal tuition. So it was very regimented, very strict. I mean, the biggest thing that I would say that I took away from there is like discipline and sort of like being able to form a sense of like self-discipline for those moments where you're kind of like are quiet and aren't doing anything, and you want to be able to sort of like motivate yourself to do something.
No, that's important.
Yeah, it is.
And what sort of roles were you cast in at drama? I'm always interested what people played at drama school.
You know what's really interesting? I always played authority, high status figures.
Did you? I don't know why that surprises me. Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised by it as well. So I remember in my second year, we did like a Gilbert and Sullivan project. I'm not sure whether they still do that now, but you perform extracts from like one particular operetta, and I think we did Rudiger, and I played sort of because Rudiger is about kind of like ancestry, and there's all these kind of like ghosts in it and that kind of thing. And I played like a very high status figure in that. Well, actually, we also did Assassins when I was in my second year, and I played Leon Shulgosh in that actually. And I actually remember getting really bad feedback for it. And then when I was in my third year, I was cast as Carl Hanratty in Catch Me If You Can, which is the role that Tom Hanks played in the film. So the detective...
Was that a musical? Was that a musical first, or?
Yeah. No, it wasn't a musical first. They adapted it from the film and the real life story. Yeah, it was written by the same team that did the adaptation of Hairspray.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you played the Tom Hanks role.
Yeah. So that was again. I sort of think back to that time actually, and I kind of go. I mean, it was quite scary because actually, particularly with musical theatre, and we were so exposed to the industry in our third year. We had a lot of people that would come and watch our shows, and interestingly, like a lot of people like myself, like a lot of people had interest in us when we weren't actually playing principal roles.
Interesting.
I mean, interestingly for me, a lot more interest came when I was doing something less. I mean, I played Lurch in the Addams Family as well, which was really fun, and really physical as well. So yeah, I think maybe there was like a sense of them of people thinking, oh, maybe he's a bit too old for that, or maybe I just wasn't that good. I don't know.
Oh, it's interesting. But, I mean, I'm also interested that moment when you leave drama school, or one leaves drama school, and then you go out into the professional world. And I remember the first play I was in when I left college, I was terribly miscast, and I was absolutely dreadful in this play that went to the Edinburgh Festival with a company that was the year above me, and it was very serious and very earnest, and I was cast as a Chilean political prisoner.
Oh yes, I remember you telling me this.
It was dreadful.
Yeah.
So in some ways, I regret that. I don't regret it. But is there anything you did after drama school that you look back and go, "Oh, I slightly regret that job," or not at all? Don't you think like that?
No, I don't regret any of my jobs at all. I think maybe what I sort of, I mean, it's hard to even say regret because, you know, I'm learning that you go on the journey that you go on, and because it gets you to where you are now. But I sort of really struggled with just sort of like taking ownership of like sort of those initial opportunities that come to you, and sort of, I mean, at least I felt like I was anyway. Like I was just so sort of like wide-eyed and green, kind of like going into the industry for the first time. And I mean, I did my first show because the director actually saw one of my third year shows, and which was High Society at the Old Vic. Maria Friedman directed that, and the choreographer of the Addams Family was working on that particular production, and she came in to watch the show at Arts Ed, and she was like, oh, I'd like him to come in and audition. And I just, yeah, I mean, I don't know how you felt like sort of in your early days of like auditioning and stuff, but I just remember being like an absolute quivering mess to
Yeah,
the point
same
where
here.
I was just
Same
like,
here.
I can't believe that I even got the job, because I remember being in the final audition, being surrounded by people who I'd seen in so many shows. I was like, oh my God, I remember you from that show and I remember you from that show. But I think the saving grace actually was that I actually then ended up doing the show with one of my really, really, really close friends who was also in the same year as me.
Oh, brilliant.
And we actually followed each other for a couple of years, because we then did our first tour together as well, which then also had like an extra 2 people from my year in it as well.
Oh, so
there was
you had buddies, which is
yeah,
good.
I had buddies, which is cool.
You mentioned the old Vic Omari, and that brings me to the first time we worked together when we were both in Emma Rice's first production with her new company, Wise Children, of the novel Wise Children. And I remember us rehearsing in Bristol and then in London. And I thought Emma did such a brilliant job of casting that particular novel and adapting it, the way in which the central characters, the central relationship of the twins changed throughout the play was so amazing. And particularly when, I think the best transition of that is when it transitions from when they're little to when they're a bit older and you are dancing, which I think I was in the audience taking photos as a kind of press man, and I was always able to look at the audience when they couldn't quite believe that this audacious swap had happened. And I remember thinking sometimes in that show, because I think we were all right for what we played, me playing Gorgeous George was a good fit, and everybody was, but I sometimes think this, when I watched you dancing in particular, it's such a tangible skill. Do you know what I mean? It's something where you go, you have obviously practiced for a long time to be able to do that. And I think audiences really love that. They love it when they see skill. Do you know what I mean? You go, wow, that's a really skillful... And I suppose you don't think about it, but the hours and hours you must have put into dancing must have paid off, or they're in your DNA, aren't they? Or...
Yeah, I think so. But I just hadn't really had a chance to sort of like employ those skills like sort of on that level of exposure before, or at least feel like that I had, because obviously the brilliance about being in the room with people like Emma and Etara, they give you like a sort of great deal of autonomy over sort of like what you want to bring to what you're doing. So, I mean, with no disrespect to the world that I had come from before, but there, a lot of things are prescribed to you and you're given sort of things to do. Whereas this felt like a real moment of kind of going like, wow, I can actually take ownership of it. But you say that about it being a tangible skill. And honestly, Paul, like, and even sort of before Wise Children, I think sort of my introduction to Emma's world and sort of working with Mike and people like that, I was like just in awe every day of being in a room with people who came from so many different worlds and like, we've had so many conversations, like, myself with you and with Mike and that kind of thing. And just sort of, it definitely allowed me to sort of find like a new level of confidence that I hadn't had before, but not even so much confidence, just more of like a bravery to actually kind of mess up, and also have more bravery to go like, I actually really want to just like keep adding to my skill set and just sort of just keep training basically, because I feel like that I've had good opportunities to be able to do that by like working with people like you, and sort of like even going down, we've spoken about John Wright, and I told you about when I went to go and do that workshop with him, and I sort of I've taken that as just like a really, really, really formative experience. And I think, because a lot of the time I sort of go, gosh, did I do the right course? Like when I was training, should I have like maybe gone like more down a straight acting route? And I go, no, like actually I don't think so, because I don't think I would have the sort of broadness of skills that I do have without doing that, that musical theatre degree. But I think what is great is like being able to sort of have this sort of bravery to go like, no, you can keep training, like you can keep trying to add to your skills.
I think you're absolutely right, Omari. I think it's such a, as one carries on in this I won't say career because that seems a crazy word to use, but in this kind of world that we're in, I think it becomes more important to sometimes think about saying yes to something that you don't know how to do, or that feels a bit, do you know what I mean, out of your comfort zone, you know. It's interesting because, of course, you've had that training. I'm sure it's clearly benefited you, but you've managed to make huge transitions. And I couldn't talk to you without touching on It's a Sin, my favourite show over the last year. And as you know, I can't mention that without mentioning my daughter, who was obsessed with it, my 14-year-old daughter. But first of all, how did that come about? Was that just something from your agent saying you've got this meeting, or?
Yeah, so it sort of came about a couple of months after we finished touring, because we sort of finished in the April of 2019, I think it was. And then, yeah, a couple of months after that, my agent just kind of came through and said, like, Andy Pryor, who was casting the show, is working on Russell T Davies's new sort of television project, which is going to be this 5-part mini series about sort of a group of friends in London during, well, at the height of the AIDS epidemic. And I really hadn't done many screen auditions before. I'd done a few, and sort of, I guess that was sort of at a time where we were all starting to sort of do self-tapes and that kind of thing. So I was like a rookie in sort of like two senses, like sort of in the screen world at first, and then also like having to do these self-tape things. So I was like, oh gosh, what's this? But then luckily I went into the room actually for the first time, and I met Andy. And yeah, he is one of those casting directors who is just very generous and sort of like really looks for like just sort of the actual like spirit in a person, and is willing to invest time. And that was just really wonderful and comforting. So yeah, that came about. And as you said, like it's good to be sort of a little bit scared of a project in a way, sort of, you want to feel like you're going to challenge yourself. And then, I mean, again, when I was at those auditions for It's a Sin, I mean, I was auditioning with a good friend of mine. I also saw like plenty of people who I was like, I've seen you on the telly, I've seen you on the telly. Why on earth are they going to give me this job? Like, I was literally just like, I don't have the same level of experience. But yeah, and then eventually it sort of like came to me, which was amazing. And I was just sort of like, oh my God, this is huge. I've actually got to do this. But
well, you were absolutely, as I've said, but I have to say on this podcast, you were brilliant in it. I'm as you all were. I'm intrigued with the central characters. Was there, because you were so credible as a group of friends. That's what, you know, that was the glue of the show. I could believe you in this flat in Brixton, and we all wanted to come out and hang out with you in that flat in Brixton. Was there a sense that Russell T Davies were looking for actors who somehow were closer to their part, or they were going to play, or not really?
I think I mean, and I've said this so many times, like the thing that blows my mind is that like we hadn't met until we got to the read through on the very first day. Yeah. None of us had met. So like there was just clearly like their instincts are just very, very, very good and very apt. But yeah, like I think they were just able to sort of like know whether someone was able to sort of like capture the essence of a character within the sort of short space of time that they were trying to get to know them before they were casting them in the roles. But what was also amazing was just the chemistry between us all was very natural. And I also think that there was like a shared sense of everyone having the same feeling about sort of being in this position, because no one, and you know, even for people like, you know, Ollie, who have had like long sort of like careers in acting like prior to him being a musician, everyone felt very like, everyone was very vulnerable about the fact that like that we were all taking on this huge thing. So there was like a shared excitedness and nervousness about, so I think that's what gave it that energy, I think. And anyway,
it's interesting as well, as if I think back on it, it was a great ensemble of actors, you know, you guys at the heart of it, and then the older actors around it, the parents. And I thought it felt weirdly, it felt a bit, it was very much television, but it felt like that sometimes what you get in theatre when you have a great ensemble all working together to tell, in this case, a really powerful and important story. But as I said to you before, I really enjoyed the mix of tone in the piece. I loved the fact that it was funny at times. And and then even more poignant as a result. Was that there in the script from the very beginning when you first read it? Did you feel that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, when we were auditioning, I only read the first 2 episodes, and then as we got closer to the filming, they sort of like dripped the other 3 scripts to us. And from the beginning, because obviously when they said it's at the height of the AIDS epidemic, I read that first episode and I was like, but this is just like loads of friends just like having an amazing time. And Russell just wanted us to lean into that. He just wanted us to have fun. And, essentially like that is what kids were doing though. Like, they can't foretell that all of this, crazy stuff is going to happen to them. So yeah, we were just really encouraged to lean into that. And then all of the other stuff will just play itself.
I mean,
you didn't have to.
It's so true, I think, of so many things that we do, that we sometimes think we have to be hinting at something or telegraphing something. But as you say, him inviting you to sit in that world of having a great... So that even at the end of that first episode, I don't want to do any spoilers if people haven't seen it, but even at the end of that first episode, it's very shocking then when you kind of realise what's happened. You go, oh my... And as someone who came to London at that time, from my generation, you suddenly went, of course, because you, as an audience, you get seduced by you lot having a good time. So I'm assuming you must all be good pals now off screen and hang out together and get together.
Oh my God, completely. Yeah, I saw a few people. Yeah, I saw a few people last week, and it's really amazing, just sort of like hearing where everyone had come from. And because again, like as I was saying, like there wasn't any sort of like ego.
Yeah,
everyone just shared this, that there was a commonality, which was that just everyone felt like that they were sort of doing something for the first time.
That comes across in the show as well. That definitely comes across, the generosity of it. Now, obviously, and brilliantly, I hope for you, it opens up possibilities. And are you in rehearsal at the moment, or about to be in rehearsal?
I've just started Constellations, because we're working with which is the Nick Payne play, and is being sort of produced on a different model. It's still directed by Michael Longhurst, who directed the original production at the Royal Court, but it's a really innovative model where there are 4 casts, which plays into the world of the play, which is this idea of parallel universes and a multiverse and multiple possibilities. So I'm performing much later in the run, from the 30th of July. So I've done an initial week of rehearsals, and then I'll sort of be back in from early July.
I think it sounds fascinating, the different combinations and the different generations. It's you and Russell Tovey in yours, isn't it? And
yeah, that's right, yeah.
It's the kind of thing where I can imagine people going, oh, I want to go again. Do you know what I mean? If they saw you two and then you saw Peter Capaldi and Zoe Wanamaker, it would be a very intriguing thing.
Yeah.
Well, I will obviously be coming along to see that, Omari. I want to do one more thing before we finish, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to ask you some random questions, and I want you to answer without thinking. Is that all right?
Okay, yeah.
Here we go. Mm-hmm. Dancing or singing?
Dancing.
Gin and tonic or Aperol Spritz?
Aperol Spritz.
Cheesecake or banoffee pie?
Cheesecake.
Broadway or the West End?
West End.
The beach or the city?
The beach.
This is, so you know, these are 2 songs I'm going to give you. The Only Way Is Up or Don't Leave Me This Way?
The Only Way Is Up.
New Orleans or Rio de Janeiro?
New Orleans.
Omari, it's been really lovely chatting to you. And I'm so thrilled it's going the way it is, because you're very, very talented and a really disciplined performer, which sounds an odd thing to say, but it really counts. And I hope to see you very soon.
Thanks so much. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, sure. Omari.
Thanks,
all the
Paul.
best. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Dear listeners, if you've enjoyed this idiot podcast, please keep it to yourself